Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show will revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Moosie Drier and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Moosie Drier, and today we are thrilled to welcome someone who was everywhere when I was growing up. Between her film and TV appearances, she's been on screen in one capacity or another for over 250 times. She was one of the stars on Blondie and The Paul Lynn Show. She's been on such iconic TV series as The Odd Couple, The Brady Bunch, Bewitched, Star Trek, and The Monkees. You'd recognize her voice as Lucy in the Peanuts cartoons and Fern in Charlotte's Web. On film, she's done work for Disney and was also credited as the first actor to ever kill a Clint Eastwood character in The Beguiled. Please help us welcome Pamelyn Ferdin. Pamelyn, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my goodness. You have no idea.
Very excited about this. Yes.
Yeah. I've been talking to him about this. So Pamelyn, in my life, I'm asked a lot, well, who did you grow up admiring? Who do you look back on and think, oh, okay, they were doing great work? And on this podcast, I often bring you up.
Oh.
I really do. I tell you why, because it's not so much
100% true. Yes.
the amount of work that you did. It's that you're the kind of actress I would watch in a scene when you weren't talking. I mean, that's when I know I genuinely believe an actor. You play the silent beats without stealing the focus, and you're not just showing up to throw out the lines you memorized.
Mr. McBee?
Mm-hmm.
About Carol.
Yeah, what about her?
Why? And I thought you loved me.
And I do, Amy.
It's all subjective, and I hope this is okay, but you're the Meryl Streep of former child actors to me.
Oh,
I
that's
mean
so
it.
sweet. Thank you very much. Well, we go back a long time. I remember you as a little one. So
One of my very first acting jobs was with you. A two-part Lassie, and there you are. You see,
yes.
I
remember that.
Yeah, my character.
You were so cute. You were such a cute little kid.
I appreciate that. My memory
You're
is
handsome now. You're handsome now. So you grew into a very handsome man.
Thank you. We already love you here, Pamela. Thank you so much. You were a regular on Lassie, and mine was a two-part guest spot. She apparently have played Lucy more than once. And you were I was watching it last night, and gosh, you were good. Well, we'll go into your work.
When Moosie first started doing this with me, one of the very first people he said that we must get is Pamelyn Ferdin. That is the truth.
Well, I remember that episode so well on Lassie. The two episodes where you were deaf and you couldn't hear like I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how you found it. How did you find that episode?
Secrets. No, I don't remember, but for years I didn't really have much of a rear view mirror. And then in recent years, I'm like, embrace it. Go back and watch and see some of the things, I'll see the things you did, whether I cringe at myself or not.
I like you. Keith likes you. Lassie likes you. Maybe if you told us who your father is, we could help you. You would just send me back.
I started acting when I was 3. By the time I was doing Lassie or the Paul Lynn Show, I basically had been acting for 10 years. So I really knew a lot about the camera and about how to find a character and how to emote in a character. And so it's interesting that I learned so much, but I guess when you start at such a young age, it just becomes part of your DNA. It's in your blood by the time you're 13.
Yeah.
So I really sympathized and brought my emotion into playing Lucy on Lassie. And I loved it. I really did. I had a great time doing Lassie.
This leads into the question. This was actually the first thing that I did want to ask you, and you just brought it up because you started so young. So you were in a commercial by 3, like you said. So because you started so young, did you think that this was what all kids did, or were you aware that not everyone was auditioning and landing roles on things?
When I was that young, when I was 3, 4, and 5, even up to 6, I thought that it was just normal and everybody did it. But there came a point when I was in school, in elementary school, and the kids treated me very differently. And so I knew that I was doing something different than what they were doing. And in fact, I had a very hard time in school. My parents should have sent me to what's called the Hollywood School. And that was a school that dealt with young kids who were in Hollywood. And so the teachers there understood that the kids might be in and out. And so they equipped them with things that they could learn when they were on the set, being taught by what's called a welfare worker. But because my parents didn't send me to the Hollywood School, I ended up being treated like a strange person, because I guess the kids couldn't figure out why I was in and out and in and out of school. So I remember that there was a Valentine's Day, and all the kids made cards to their favorite friend in the classroom. And I didn't get any Valentine card because they just didn't know me and they treated me like an alien, kind of. And so that was really difficult for me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that happened to you, but yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to ask, because I read that you said that your mom kind of pushed you into it more than you actually wanting to do it. So were there times growing up that you expressed a desire that I don't want to do this anymore?
Well, when I first got in the business, I was really scared, because when you go into a casting room to basically interview, they don't let the mothers in. So on my first several interviews, I was really scared, and I didn't get the interview because I was so scared. I was trying to figure out, where's my mom and why am I here? And so but she kept on pushing me and pushing me, and I finally got comfortable with going out on interviews.
Yeah. Whether you were pushed into it or not, you were such a natural. Pam, do you remember the first time when you were a child that you saw yourself on television?
You know, I don't really remember. I think I was just too young. I remember filming all the episodes and the TV commercials I did, but I don't recall when I actually saw myself. Um,
Right.
so, but you're right. You're right. I became a natural, because once I got over the fear of going out on interviews, I basically knew if I did a good job on the interview. In fact, there were a lot of times when I came out of the interview and said, I got that interview to my mom. I got it. And I just knew by the reaction of the casting directors. And it's funny because the other mothers And even some of the kids, when they saw me come in to the office where the interview was taking place,
There we go.
some of them said, Pam's gonna get it. Pam's gonna get it. So
Yeah.
that was very funny.
Can imagine. I mean, listen, and you did. You know, maybe they shouldn't have mumbled that out loud and give their own child more confidence, but you were gonna get it. I mean, I remember I'm gonna guess at the time, as far as other girls you would see, like your competition, there was, of course, Jodie Foster, and then do you remember an actress named Lisa Garrettson?
Oh,
She was
yes.
a very good actress as well. I know
Yes.
you worked a lot more than her, but she was also one of those real actors. Like, you know, she may have been a child, fine, but like yourself, you were actually bringing it, you know. And she was good. I bet you guys were up for a few of the same roles.
Yes, but it's interesting about Lisa Garrettson because we did the very first Odd Couple
That's
episode
right.
together. And she was hired to play kind of the mean, sarcastic little girl. And Jerry Paris was the director, and I loved him because he directed me in the first series I ever did, which was the John Forsythe Show. And I just loved Jerry Paris. And Jerry Paris decided, instead of Lisa Gerritsen playing the mean, sarcastic little girl, he decided during the episode, at the very beginning, actually, of the episode, to have me switch roles with her so that I was the little sarcastic, nasty little girl. And it worked out great. I loved playing her.
Well, those characters are more fun, and you played a lot of sweet, innocent, you know, characters. So I bet that was a lot of fun. One of your
Yeah.
first one of your first credits was "What a Way to Go," right? A film. Now look at the people in this film. It's Paul Newman, Shirley MacLaine, Dean Martin, and there are a lot of other heavy hitters in that. Were you aware of who these people were and what and aware of their work before you went into that?
No, I was so young that I didn't recognize a lot of big stars. And now I look back on it, gee, I wish I had known who these great stars were that I acted with or that I saw around the studio. But I remember Dean Martin, who was in the movie. And I remember that he was really, really friendly to me. And I would go over and watch him have his makeup put on by the makeup artist. And he would talk to me. So I remember that. I just didn't know that he was Dean Martin. I remember when I was really little filming the John Forsythe show. I think I was 5 or maybe 6. And the commissary. The commissary, do you remember the commissaries?
Which lot?
On Universal.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Yes.
they were built in 1930s where all the stars and the producers and the directors would go in to this commissary, which was huge. And they'd all have drinks, they'd all have cocktails, and they would talk to each other. And then they would go back to the set, to the sound stage, and carry on.
Yeah.
And I remember I would go into the commissary and there would be Lucille Ball and Paul
Oh,
Newman and Gregory Peck and all these incredible actors that I remember their faces, but I didn't know who they were.
Right.
But now that I think back on it, of course it was Lucille Ball, and of course
Yeah.
it was Gregory Peck. You know what I'm
oh,
saying? And my mother, of course, would say, "Oh, that's, Gregory Peck and that's Lucille Ball." So I knew their names, but I just didn't know how big a star they were.
Yeah. You were probably in a similar place as myself and probably other child actors in that I knew how big of a star was or can get an idea based on my mother's reaction to them. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah, and
you,
obviously they don't do that anymore. In fact, that's why the studios, we caught the last end of the golden age. We caught the tail end of that golden age where the studios were really a family.
Mhm.
The security guard at the front knew your name and you knew them, and you would go into the commissaries for lunch and everybody would be eating together and they'd say hi to each other. And now they have their own RV or Winnebago, and they have lunch in there, and they have their own chefs. And so it really is a totally different era now.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the John Forsythe show because besides John Forsythe, you had Elsa Lanchester, N.B. Davis from the Brady Bunch, and Peggy Lipton. So that was the first time you had a recurring role on the show. So was there a different feeling, knowing that you'd be coming back again to the show, that you'd be working like semi-regularly at least on something?
Yeah, it was, again, we got to be a family. And John Forsythe, oh my gosh, he was just fantastic. I mean, he really loved me. And in fact, I was so good at memorizing, even at that age, I was so good at memorizing that if we were doing a scene together and John Forsythe forgot a line, instead of looking at the script girl who sat right next to the camera, and where you basically, if you forgot a line, you looked at the script girl and said, "What's my line?" or she would tell you, he looked at me and he'd say, "Pammy, what's my line?" And I would tell him. And so I really, really enjoyed doing the John Forsythe show. And in fact, um, a little story about it. That's when they had a tram going around the studio way before they built an amphitheater and the theme park. I mean, that whole entire mountain that's on was wildlife and trees and grass. And so they only had a tram that the tourists and fans would go on, and it would go around the studio lot. So they used to stop when we were filming the outside exterior scenes of the school in the John Forsythe show.
Mhm.
And I started hopping on the tram, and the tram driver would drive the tram, and there would be a host who would interview me, and he'd ask me all these questions on the tram, and then they'd drop me off at the commissary for lunch. So I really had a great time doing that. That was fun. That was a lot of fun for me.
I promise you that was more valuable for the people who bought a ticket to get
Right.
on the tram than this is the building where that was shot. I mean, to have,
Yes.
an actor that they know and love on the tram answering questions and then, hey, let's take her to the commissary. That's fantastic. So the Brady Bunch was mentioned. You were in arguably the most popular episode of the Brady Bunch where Jan got a black wig. And I think I read that you said something like you may get recognized from that as much, if not more than anything, which is kind of crazy because of your body of work. But anyway, what do you remember about working on that show? Were you excited to get on it?
Yeah, well, I was busy working, so I never interviewed for the Brady Bunch.
Mm-hmm.
But the producer liked my work. He knew of my work. And so I didn't even interview for Lucy Winter on the Brady Bunch.
Right.
They just hired me.
Jan, that's terrific.
Thanks.
That's the funniest joke you've ever played.
But I have to say, the other kids on the Brady Bunch, they knew each other so well that I wasn't really a part of their group. So I had a good time, but I didn't, it wasn't like all the kids hung out together.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's natural. They click. They're there every day with each other. So I'm sure no one intended any of the guest stars to feel a little bit on the outside of the bubble. It's just kind of the way it was.
And of course, Ann B. Davis remembered me from the John Forsythe
Right.
show.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we had a connection, and she was great. She was really funny.
I'm sure.
You seemed it. Yeah, I want to ask about a movie that I just loved. Such a fun Disney movie, the one and only genuine original family band. Another great cast: Walter Brennan, Buddy Ebsen, John Davidson, Leslie Ann Warren, and Kurt Russell. So, what were your experiences on that? And I also, was there an extra special feeling to work on a Disney film?
Yeah, there really was. Again, in those days, it was more of a family. So the crew, the electricians and the lighting people, they all rode bicycles around the studio to get to different places. And so they let me ride the bicycle, and that was thrilling to me. And the younger kids, we were taught in the Little Red Schoolhouse on the lot, which is
Oh,
famous because all the stars of the past, I think it started maybe in the 1950s, they built this quote Little Red Schoolhouse. And so we were taught there. But yeah, I Buddy Epson was great. He told me about dancing with Shirley Temple because he liked to dance with me and he thought I was a good dancer.
Yeah.
So that was neat. And also, I have to say, um, the scenery on the Disney Ranch at the time was absolutely gorgeous. For all the exterior shots, we were driven by bus to the Disney Ranch, which is about 35 minutes from Walt Disney Studios, which it was called Walt Disney Studios back then. And this ranch was so beautiful, just rolling hills studded with oak trees and peacocks. They had a flock of peacocks that when they were screeching, I thought it was so beautiful, but they had to stop filming when they started screeching. So it was great. And of course, the costumes. It was the first time I was ever in costumes from the 1880s. And
oh,
so the petticoats and the costumes and the lace-up shoes, I just loved getting into my costume because then you really felt like you were living in the past, that it was old-fashioned.
sure.
So yeah, I really liked it. And another thing I remember is the stand-in for me worked on The Wizard of Oz. He
Oh,
was one of
wow.
the characters. He was one of the little people in The Wizard of Oz.
No
So
kidding.
that was thrilling to me.
You get to work with somebody who was in The Wizard of Oz. So, you
Yeah,
know, we did some cool things when we were a kid. I know it wasn't all, butterflies and flowers.
Being a child actor is very challenging.
Mm.
And a lot of child actors end up with drug and alcohol problems um, and it's hard work, especially when you're little.
yeah,
I think it gets easier as you get older, but when you're tiny and you don't understand when you're first starting out and you don't understand what's going on, it can be scary and it could be anxiety provoking. So I'm just glad that you, Moosie, and me, knock wood, came out pretty normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're lucky. Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing though that you didn't mention, at times it could be really lonely as well because if you're not working with other kids and keeping yourself, and keeping that childlike spirit at least, within arm's reach, you grow up so fast. I love the work. I love the craft. I love acting itself. For the most part, I would go back and do it again.
Yeah.
So speaking of Disney, you worked with Ron Howard on the Magical World of Disney, right? You did like a
Smoke.
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 Okay. What was it like working with Ron Howard, who was another?
Well, he was in high school at the time,
Uh,
and I developed a crush on him. And
Mhm.
of course, it's interesting because even at, I think he was 16, he had a serious girlfriend that he later married, and they've been
Oh,
married for years and years. But I just had a crush on him. He was he was so cute to me. But it's interesting because he played sports and he played baseball. And during the filming, right in the middle of the filming, he got hit with a baseball on his jaw. And so they had to wire his teeth shut. And
oh,
so
wow.
we were on basically a hiatus for 6 weeks. So we went to school every day in the little red schoolhouse. Um, so that's kind of where I got to be with him and developed a crush. But
Yeah.
we were, it was interesting. But Earl Holliman, oh my gosh, he started smoke, and he was wonderful. And but I had worked with or been with the actual Walt Disney, and we did that print ad with
Oh, wow.
all the cartoon characters behind him in outfits. I mean, they were men and women who were wearing these incredible Disney outfits. That was really great because I was aware that he was something special. And even though I don't think he was feeling that well at the time because he passed away about 3 months later of lung cancer.
Wow.
So I don't think he was feeling that well, but I knew, I mean, I was right up close to him. I was right
Amazing.
next to him,
Wow.
and it was thrilling. It was really thrilling to
Yeah.
um to be next to, when my
Well,
mother told me that he created Disneyland. There was just one Disneyland at the time. It was in Anaheim, California. So there was just one. And when my mother told me that he had built and he had imagined and built the whole entire Disneyland and all the rides, I was pretty impressed.
amazing.
No kidding.
Yes.
A lot of us worked for Disney Studios. Pamelyn worked with Walt Disney. Like
Yeah.
that's what separates her from the rest. That's outstanding. So let's go from Disney to this is on the far other side of the field here. So The Beguiled. So it's with Clint Eastwood, and I think he shot that in Louisiana. And one of my sisters was one of the girls in The Beguiled. I loved the 71 or 72, whenever that was, version. And when you find him in the woods, I'm not watching Clint Eastwood. I'm watching you. I think you've done some comedy and light, fluffy stuff. This is heavy. This is dark.
I definitely remember filming the opening scene. That was the first scene we filmed of the movie. And it was, like you said, those exterior shots were filmed in Louisiana.
Mhm.
And there was an antebellum house that was falling apart inside, but it was a gorgeous, gorgeous house on the outside that was built during the Civil War or before, actually before the Civil War. So we used the exterior of the house for part of the scene, or part of the scenes, I should say. But the first scene I did was walking through the forest picking mushrooms, because that's what I would do. I would pick mushrooms for dinner most nights.
Mhm.
So there I was, and I remember that again, I was in this costume from the mid 1800s, and I really felt like I went back in time. I mean, I truly felt like I was living during the Civil War. And I remember that Clint Eastwood was injured. And I took him back to my school, the girls' school that I was in. But I remember that Clint Eastwood and Don Siegel, who was the director, really connected. And that's when Clint Eastwood wanted to start directing. So he and Don Siegel actually talked about and decided, where the camera should be, and the cinematography almost, because he really wanted to be a director. I remember that there was the first scene I was supposed to be afraid because a carriage of Confederate soldiers were going past Clint Eastwood and myself. So Clint Eastwood had me get down so that they wouldn't see us because they were Confederate and he was a Union soldier. So they had planned that Clint Eastwood would cover my mouth.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't scream. And he and Don Siegel kind of talked about it, and instead they decided that he should kiss me.
Amelia, but everybody calls me Amy.
I'm Corporal John McBurney, but everybody calls me McBee. How old are you, Amy?
12. 13 in September.
Old enough for kisses.
Which I don't think would go over in the 2000s. I don't think that would happen. I mean, maybe.
I was going to ask you, so your reaction is real there. You were surprised by that.
Yeah, when he kissed me, yeah, I was surprised.
I think you're 12. Like, geez. Yeah.
But it was too, I think it was too dark for the time, and people didn't want to see Clint Eastwood die.
Must understand it was the wine that turned loose the devils in me.
I do understand. That's why I picked the mushrooms. And Mr. McBee said himself how delicious they were.
Lizzie, Amy, open the gates.
They wanted him to be a Dirty Harry. So I think that's why the movie didn't do well at the box office. I mean, it really crashed at the box office.
Which was a surprise because Eastwood, and it was so well done. Yeah. I think that's a surprise. But eventually John Wayne got shot in the back by Bruce Stern.
They said that the audiences felt it was misleading because they saw, advertisements with Clint Eastwood with a gun, and they thought it was going to be that type of movie, and it really wasn't.
And I think it was ahead of its time too. But unfortunately, sometimes great movies don't get a lot of box office sales.
Yeah. It's about numbers. It's about dollars. And at the time, somehow it just wasn't one of those mega hits for the studios. Clint Eastwood at one point said that it was his favorite movie that he did, because my sister was also in it. I remember telling her, this, I think at that point you actually call people on the phone, but I think I called my sister and said, hey, Clint Eastwood just mentioned The Beguiled is one of his favorite films, if not his favorite. Anyway.
Well, remember, your sister came with my parents to Louisiana because your mom couldn't go.
Yeah.
So since Peggy and I were friends, Peggy Drier came with us, and that was a lot of fun. Peggy and I, we really connected and we had a good time. I remember when we found out the room of the hotel that Clint Eastwood was staying in. In those days, especially where we were filming, there were no nice hotels. They were all small, basic motels. So that's where Clint Eastwood had a room. So I remember that we quietly got into his corridor, and then we opened his door more because it was a little open. So we opened his door more, and we thought that was so cool because his bed was unmade. He had liquor next to the bed. Oh, we thought that was really neat at the time. And we got to go to the governor's mansion because the governor knew that we were filming a movie in Louisiana. So in Baton Rouge, we visited the governor, and Peggy and I went down his dumbwaiter, He had a dumbwaiter that would take food up
Yeah.
and
Oh,
down.
cool.
So Peggy and I rode in it. So we had a good time.
Love that. Yeah, you guys really hit it off. You would come over and and hang out at our house, and I remember, yeah.
Oh, before we hit some of your other roles in front of the camera, let's talk about some of the voice roles that you did, because it's not often that someone stars in something that's considered a classic. You were in 3 different ones. You were Lucy in the Peanuts cartoons, Fern in Charlotte's Web, and Sally in Cat in the Hat. So I want to first start asking, what led to you wanting to do voiceover? Because you already had such a prolific career in front of the camera.
Lucy, I was working so much, I didn't really get to see many TV shows that I later ended up acting in, and voiceovers. So I think the only Peanuts cartoon that I had seen was the Christmas cartoon.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking to myself, boy, that Lucy, she's really mean to Charlie Brown. So when I went out on the interview, and there were like, I think 250 little girls that recorded for that for Lucy in Peanuts, I remember I didn't want to play her as straight mean because I wasn't a nasty person. I was sweet and wholesome. So what I did was I played her as super smart, super intellectual, but she would get frustrated with Charlie Brown because a lot of the time he just didn't get it. So that's how I played her.
Relax here a while, Charlie Brown. We'll solve this problem together. When you have emotional problems, it is usually because you have no outlets. You need emotional outlets.
What kind of emotional outlets would you suggest?
This football is a perfect answer.
Really loved doing voiceovers because you didn't have to get dressed in a costume. You didn't have to have your makeup put on in a makeup chair. And you would just be with all the different actors. I'm pretty sure that they don't do that anymore. What happens now is they have actors come in separately to do voiceovers. And back then, they had everybody in the studio at one time.
Yeah.
So actually in Charlotte's Web, which I loved doing, I really felt connected to her. Oh my gosh, that was one of the, well, I loved all the voiceovers I did, but that one just really touched my heart. And we were all in there together. Henry Gibson, Paul Lynn, Debbie Reynolds, I mean, everybody. And we had mics, they were spread out like 14 mics. We just had a really good time. And I remember singing to Wilbur.
There must be something more to us than you and me. It must be tangled up somehow with destiny. I used to think the sum of 1 and 1 was 2, but we add up to more, me and you.
I just got so emotional. I practically cried while I sang to Wilbur. And you know, I'm very I really connect and feel very, very sad about the downtrodden. And maybe that's why I became, in fact, I know that's why I became vegan, because I just love animals and I hate for them to be tortured and slaughtered. And so I really connected with Wilbur, who my father in Charlotte's Web was going to kill because he was the runt.
Yeah.
And I pleaded with my father, Daddy, you can't kill Wilbur. What if I had been born a runt? That was my life.
Charlotte's Web was a beautiful film, and I remember like it really tugged at your heartstrings. And speaking of back in the day when you do voiceover work and you can actually play off each other as opposed to, isolating, being the only one in the room recording. We did a VO job together, one of the few jobs that we did together. There was a Hanna-Barbera series that only went one season called These Are the Days.
Yeah.
And it was
I remember These Are the Days.
Jackie Earle Haley, June Lockhart, Mickey Dolenz, do you remember Henry Jones? He was a character actor, kind of like Ron Howard's father, Rance Howard, where they were just in so much.
Danny's coming. I just spotted him and Butch coming up the road.
Well, now mine, not making the band's bound to be a big disappointment to the boy.
I'll never understand that. How could Danny not know he wasn't good enough?
I was stunned that Mickey Dolenz, a member of the Monkees, was doing voiceovers.
Me too, because weren't you? I know you were on the Monkees. We're going to ask about that. But I was a fan of the Monkees, and I remember the same feeling, like he's doing but he's one of the Monkees. Yeah.
I know. I couldn't believe it.
You mentioned Paul Lynn a second ago, so I want to ask about that because you were a regular on his show, legendary entertainer. You played his daughter. So we've had people on here who loved him. We've also had people on here who not so much. So what were your experiences with Paul?
Yeah, well, I have to be honest. I think, he was a gay man. And I think that he was so frustrated at that time that he couldn't come out. Because still, in those days, gay men didn't come out, even though there were tons in the entertainment business. So I think he was frustrated because he played a married man who had 2 daughters, one of which was me.
Daddy, what are you doing home?
Well, I thought I came home for fun and games. But it's been one big, dull surprise party.
Sally, what are you doing home from school? Our civics teacher let us out early so we can watch the demonstration against Tope Oil. She wants us to see democracy in action.
When I was in school, they only let us out for fire drill. Give me my coat.
He wasn't a warm, friendly guy. He just wasn't. And some of his jokes on the episodes were a little bit, had a mean and sarcastic tone to them. So when I worked with him, I didn't think he was very funny, or very warm. And so the set wasn't a happy one. I had just completed The Odd Couple, which I didn't want to leave, but I had a reoccurring role on The Odd Couple. And Gary Marshall, the producer and director, wanted me to do more, but I probably would have done about 5 per season. And so I went out on interviews and I got the Paul Lynn show, which was, I was in every single episode. So my mother decided that I should be on the Paul Lynn show. And I remember begging her. I said I would rather be on a few shows on The Odd Couple than leave. And because The Odd Couple was so much fun and the cast and crew, we had the best time. So going from there to the Paul Lynn show, the cast didn't really connect. They weren't really warm and friendly. And so it wasn't a happy set for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
And listen, at the time when we come across people like that, I go, God, they're not very nice. But looking back, I kind of want to give him a hug. No one knows what he was going through. Of course, he couldn't be who he was because back then people didn't really come out. He also, we had one guest, it's hearsay, I guess, but we had one guest not long ago talk about his drinking, and he that obviously may have played a part in people's experience with him.
Well, I know the one thing we did connect on was dogs, because he loved dogs. And I, even back then, again, because I was so sympathetic to the downtrodden, I would always rescue my dogs from a shelter because they were going to be killed if I didn't rescue them, or if people don't rescue from a shelter. And so I talked to him about my Dalmatian at the time, who was deaf. And I would take walks around my neighborhood, and Tabithina would run ahead of me and then look back because she could see me, obviously, and she wanted to make sure I was there. So Paul Lynn talked to me about his dogs and how much he loved them and how they made him feel so happy. So that's the only thing that we really connected on.
Right. And you were up for a role in Family Affair as well?
Oh yeah, I did 2 or 3 Family Affairs, I think.
But were you supposed to be like a regular at one point? That's what I was reading, or is that not the case?
No, I lived on the floor below Jody and Buffy.
Since Carol was the second to come in the club after me, if it's all right with everybody, she'll be our secretary, okay? What about elections? Well, it's against the main rule. And if Buffy's a member, then I want my kid sister to be in too.
Because her uncle built this clubhouse for us.
You know, I went out for that role of Buffy, and
that's what it was.
They didn't choose me. They wanted somebody who really resembled Jody, who really looked like Jody. Because I think, weren't they supposed to be twins?
Yes.
Right. So they wanted somebody that resembled him perfectly. Yeah. But they liked me enough that they ended up hiring me to be the friend of Buffy's. But I do remember that I thought Buffy, Anissa Jones, was spoiled, because I remember the wardrobe woman would bring to her a whole section of clothes, and there must have been on a rack. They would wheel the rack into her where she was standing, and she would pick out the outfit that she wanted to wear. So I don't know. I just found her a little bit spoiled.
They were spoiling her. She was one of the stars of a TV show. And, it's kind of easy, I guess, for her, to get in that trap of like, I get to just say what I want and be, a little bit bossy pants at that age.
Right. And her mother spoiled her, and I was never spoiled. I was never, ever spoiled. In fact, if anything, I was treated more harshly than I should have been by my mother. But her mother just fawned over her. And I think you're right. I think she just, I don't know, something happened and she got into drugs. And
yeah.
As a fan, because you both were in the business, as a fan looking at you always came across as very warm and friendly. I mean, that could just be perception, but that's what it was as a fan looking at you and your roles and everything.
Oh, thank you. You see, that makes me feel good. That really does. Thank you very much.
It's so true. So, Pam, was there a role, I imagine this might be the case, is there anything you look back on and go, I almost got that and I really wanted it, or darn it, I worked so much I had to turn that down, like a famous role or a favorite role that you wanted to do, but for whatever reason didn't end up doing it?
I think the middle sister on Brady Bunch.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it was such a hit, I think I could have brought something more like bubbly and friendly.
Yeah.
Which might have not been the right way to play the character.
Yeah, but it's a fair enough, honest answer. Like, wish I could have given that a shot. I think a lot of actors who've been in the industry for so long usually have that one, dang it moment, like I wanted that, or had to turn it down. I know that happens too. You're already working on something else.
Right. I was working on something else, and so I never interviewed for it.
Right.
Oh well.
So included in the legendary comedians that you worked with Bob Hope. What was that like? Do you remember working with him?
Yeah, he was a doll. He really, I was so young, I was a Texaco girl.
It's because Sky Chief keeps deposits from building up on valves better than any other leading gasoline.
he was great. He would sit me on his lap and he would talk to me, and he was like a grandfather to me. He was wonderful, very warm, very friendly, just wonderful.
That's great. Yeah.
Loved him. Okay, I want to ask, just because you did one part, you mentioned him a couple of times already, and I was such a huge fan, still a huge fan of the Monkees. What was that like to be on that show?
I thought that Davy Jones was really cute. And I loved their music. I thought it was great because even though I didn't listen to, well, I didn't choose that kind of music. My two older sisters listened to the Monkees all the time. So I got used to hearing them. So I just thought it was great. Here I was, right next to the Monkees.
I loved the Monkees. I loved the opening theme. I loved their music. They put a lot of good music together for a band that wasn't a band before. The episodes, the scripts, I couldn't even understand what was happening half the time. It was kind of a little psychedelic and all over the place to me, but it still worked. Everyone watched the Monkees.
Right. I felt the exact same way. I couldn't follow it. I couldn't follow the episodes, but I liked the music. And so that was
Jonathan, what are your thoughts? He was a huge Monkees.
I love the show. I did love the show. We've also had on several of the new Monkees. You remember they rebooted it in the 80s. And so I just loved everything about it. Everything Monkees, I just absorbed. Have seen them in concert many times, so I loved everything.
Well, if there's anything about the old scripts that you understand that I'm not getting, just let me know, because I couldn't get what stories they're telling on their episodes. Anyway,
well, before we go on, I just want to say quickly though, because you mentioned The Odd Couple. I could have sworn this week before looking up that you were on so many episodes as Felix's daughter, and you're only on 2, and that's how much of an impression you made, by the way.
Really?
Yes. So
yeah, I was actually on 3, but 2 as his daughter. And
I remember you so vividly from that, and it's just like, wow, she was only on 2 episodes, so that's how much you stood out. So.
Yeah, I wish. Now that's something that I look back on and am really frustrated by, that my mother didn't allow me to stay on The Odd Couple, because I think I would have been on more episodes.
Sure.
Again, I was on a reoccurring basis. So they would have me on maybe 2 episodes for the season. But I think because of my connection with Tony Randall, I had such a connection with him. We just played off each other so well. I had never played off another actor so well and had so much fun being a comedian as I did with Tony Randall. And the whole crew was just fun and warm, and he was just a riot. He would crack me up with his snort. Remember his snort?
Oh, yeah.
He was the same character in real life as he was on The Odd Couple. He would come to rehearsal with a perfect suit on and a tie, and he was so smart. And in between our scenes, he would sing Italian operettas. I mean, he was just a really unbelievable.
Hi, Daddy. Oh, look at the birthday girl. Oh, she looks so beautiful. So pretty. And look what we got here.
What's that?
It's your birthday cake.
Happy birthday, Edna.
Don't you like it?
It's simple, but it says it.
And I remember my mother was still a smoker back then, and it was filmed in front of a live audience. So there were like bleachers in front of all the sets that were facing out towards the bleachers. And my mother was smoking. And he said, you, there'll be no smoking on this set. And he said it would hurt my voice and I won't be able to sing opera. He was
That's
just a
funny.
riot. And even the rehearsals were fun. Jack Klugman would come in like a sloppy outfit. He was the same way. He was like his character. And he would come in baggy jeans and he brought bagels for everybody and we'd sit around reading the script. And so it just worked so well.
So from the Odd Couple to the next logical thing to ask about, the big cult classic, The Toolbox Murders. It has a big following. You were with Wesley Ure in the film. What can you tell us about it? And also, I read that you had never seen the whole thing until you did the DVD commentary.
Exactly. Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Because it was too frightening for me. I don't like violence. And so it was too violent for my taste. But I remember, that was the time in acting for me where things kind of changed. Things, movies, films, they began to be more dark and had more sexual content. They were just, I don't know. I mean, Taxi Driver and just that whole era was filled with sexuality and perversion, and I just didn't feel comfortable. And so when my mother again pushed me to go out on this interview and the director specifically requested my going out and reading the script for him, I said, okay, I will. And I remember it was fun to film because Cameron Mitchell, who played the Toolbox Killer, I had worked with in High Chaparral. So we had a lot to talk about of memories of High Chaparral. So that was fun. But I remember I was supposed to be tied up in bed, and they wanted me to show my breast, have my nightgown show my breast. And I said, I just can't do that. So I remember they put it like right on the side. And I kept tugging it more and more back. But, I just never wanted to do nude scenes. That's when everybody was doing nude scenes in the 80s. And I just didn't feel comfortable doing it. So
right after that, that's when you decided to step away from acting. I mean, that's you because I read that was pretty much all of the time that you were saying, that's it, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, the interviews were not being done on the studio lot anymore, which is where actors usually went. They had a casting office right on the studio lot. But I would go out on interviews and they would have them in like sleazy apartment buildings.
Oh, wow.
And just apartments that it was just depressing.
There was a hotel room stuff once in a while too. Which was really creepy.
I just didn't like it at all. And I think I continued doing commercials, and then I did Space Academy. But yeah, that's when I decided that I really didn't like how I was feeling about the business. And I was so used to being this sweet and wholesome girl and funny. And so I decided, I just don't like it. Now, it's interesting that it's kind of come around again to where if I stayed in the business and maybe didn't work for a while, I could have gotten back into it. But I just, that was kind of, Space Academy was the last thing I did. Like I said, I did voiceovers and commercials after that, but that was the last, on-camera series I did.
So when you finally decided, maybe I'm going to step away from acting, and you told your mother, right? Is this what happened?
She was furious.
Okay.
Curious, yeah.
She was furious.
How old were you
And so
when that
was
happened?
my agent. I was 20. And My agent didn't want me to leave, obviously. My
Yeah.
mother was furious, and I said, I want to go to college. Because remember, my whole life, I didn't have any friends. I really didn't. I was working so much, I couldn't make friends or make close friends. So I really wanted to go to college because I thought, finally I can make friends and have some fun. And, I liked to study. So that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. It's your life, and and you're 20 at the time. And you didn't really, that all you knew was being a professional actor. There's so much life and so much world out there. I was curious as to what your mom's reaction and your agent. I wonder if we had the same agent, although by that time maybe you didn't have. Were you ever with Dorothy Day Otis by chance?
That was my agent.
Oh, how great.
For most of the years. She was a child actor agent.
Yeah.
She specialized in children.
Yeah.
And so she she was wonderful. What a lady.
You've been an animal activist for as long as I can remember. So what is it that you do? How can people get involved?
They can go to my personal Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do is I post what I'm personally doing, whereas my professional page, which is Pamelyn Ferdin on Facebook, that's where I post all my memories of my acting career. Pamelyn Ferdin on my Facebook page. But on my personal page, I post things I'm doing in my personal life, but about once a week, I post an animal rights post. Mm-hmm. And so people can learn by reading my posts that, circus with animals are cruel. Aquariums where they enclose these mammals, sea mammals, are cruel. I'm a vegan, so I haven't eaten meat or dairy products, because if people look into it and people read my posts, they'll learn what the dairy and meat industry is hiding, the cruelty and the suffering that they're. So I would do that. My personal page is Pam Pam. So that's my personal page, Pam Pam. And I'm holding flowers, and then I'm holding my rescued chicken. So I like it when people go to both pages, because again, on my professional page, Pamelyn Ferdin, I do once a week post my memories of acting in quite a bit of detail. In fact, I just posted about the Pamelyn show. I posted about Mannix, working on Mannix, the John Foresight show, the original family band, Jonathan. I posted like 4 parts of that in detail. So
I love it. I'm sure people appreciate that, because, a lot of people don't, go down that road and go, hey, this is what I did. It was, and then give a little bit, give their thoughts on it. People must be enjoying that. So, Pam, I just can't thank you enough for doing this. I was so excited. Like, it's different. It was different when I knew you were coming on. Such a fan. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I've really had a good time. I enjoy talking about my memories of that period in the acting business, because again, you and I caught that end of the golden age when these big stars were still alive. Bob Hope, Lucille Ball. I mean, most of them are gone, but we actually got to be in a circle with them at studios. I mean, even if we didn't work with them directly, we would see them walking around, and we would see them walking to the sound stage. And so it was just incredible back then. And it's really gotten to be, like I was mentioning, when stars started having their private Winnebagos, and they started separating themselves from the other cast members in the crew. I don't know. It
became less of a collective effort, a team effort, and it seemed more like, stars started to believe the hype and become a little more prima donna-ish. But yeah, I do remember meeting, John Wayne and Groucho Marx, and like the tail end of people that are legends, and so many will never get the opportunity to come across them, and I feel lucky in that way. 70s was kind of a good time, it was kind of a cool time to be doing what you were doing.
Yeah, and I was in it during the 60s, so I really got to enjoy seeing some of these stars. I mean, they built Hollywood. The people that we worked with actually built Hollywood.
Yep.
And so I feel really lucky too. I just wish that I would have known how big a stars they were.
You mentioned Facebook. Is there any other social media that people can follow you on?
No.
Okay.
I'm old school. Just my professional page on Facebook, Pamelyn Ferdin, and then my personal page on Facebook, Pam. But that's it.
You're about to be inundated with friend requests.
Yay!
And I'm right there with you. Like, how much time can I put into this? But I know people do. They love it.
Much to my chagrin that you don't.
Yeah, I know. He wishes I would. Anyway, Pamelyn, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's so great to see you. You look amazing.
Moosie and Jonathan, I really, really had a good time. And Moosie, it's so wonderful to talk to you after all these years.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Let me sign us out and then we can finish up. I'll sign us out first. This has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Moosie Drier. And again, a very special thanks to Pamelyn Ferdin. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for tuning in to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast. Listening to this podcast just makes you really cool.